NFL free agency is underway, and a lot of big names have already changed places. Some people going here, there, or pretty much everywhere. Or in some cases, Rodgers is still not signed. Amir is joining the show. We're going to be going through NFL free agency, some of the biggest moves so far. Are they winners? Are they losers? Let's get into it. We're going to kick it off here with T. Higgins, Amir. I am going to say this. Some of these are player based, some of these are team based. Some of these are focused on one side of the ball for a certain team. And what have they done this offseason? But for T. Higgins, Amir, I think personally, for him, he's a loser this free agency. And it's not his fault. He got franchise tagged for the second year in a row. And sure, when $26 million direct deposit hits your account, that's never a bad thing, right? When you wake up and see that. But for him, being in the prime of his physical career, to not get a long-term contract yet, I think is a loser because, injuries can happen in a physical sport like football. And if you continue to franchise tag him and then let's say next year he gets hurt, that might not give him the ability to get this long-term contract, or at least not the money that he deserves that he should have had the last 2 years. Amir, your thoughts on T. Higgins, the player? How frustrating could that be, for you? You're a collegiate player. How frustrating do you think that would be if you're not, this team's holding you back from getting the money you deserve?
Yeah, man. If I was him, this is the second year in a row, and I completely understand. He's getting 26 million. That is a lot of money, but
Yes.
a guy for his caliber, he's sort of a guy that's in the shadow of Jamar Chase and T Higgins. We've been saying this since last season. This guy could actually go to a team and be an automatic contributor right away, on a true contending championship team. And so for him, I'm completely upset. I think this is an L for the Bengals because the Bengals, I don't understand why the front office is being cheap. Pay your players and just draft better, and that would solve everything. We go ahead and we look at Howie Roseman for the Eagles. They have drafted absolutely amazing, and they paid their players. They went ahead and stopped being cheap. They understood, all right, we're gonna go ahead and make win now moves, and it's like at the end of the day, if I'm Cincy, I'm also doing everything I can to keep Joe Burrow happy. Whatever he says, I'm going to follow it. I'm going to keep him happy. I'm going to make sure we can go ahead and cater to his skill set, which is having a high power, fiery offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's not often that you see a team with a top three quarterback in the league, okay, at the bare minimum, top four, right? If you're a Ravens fan, you have an elite quarterback, is what I'm getting at. A quarterback that has taken you to multiple AFC title games. You've won one, and you've been in the Super Bowl, where if a couple calls went your way, you could have even won the Super Bowl. To have a quarterback like that and to refuse to pay the elite players around him to keep this team in the mix, because when you're in the mix and you have that quarterback that can take you over the top, again, that's all you need. To refuse to pay some of these elite players, it's mind-boggling. And T. Higgins, 2 years ago, should have already gotten a 4-year deal. And we see it now, Amir. It's so easy to manipulate the salary cap now and to push the reconstructor contracts. So even if you paid him a max deal 2 years ago, he's already in the middle of his deal. And if you need to make some money work, you can reconstructure Joe Burrow's deal, T. Higgins' deal. Now Trey Hendrickson might be traded, and he just had 17 and a half sacks. They call him cheap and natty for a reason, Amir. Any additional thoughts about T.
Yeah.
Higgins? As a whole, I think Cincinnati's a loser, but again, not his fault. T. Higgins is a result of that. He's also a loser in my books.
Yeah, man. I feel bad for him. I think he lost his free agency once again. He deserves to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully next year. Hopefully next year he ends up in Green Bay with the best quarterback in the league, Jordan Love. Caleb Williams, I'm going to say as both the offense of the Chicago Bears, but also most notably Caleb Williams is a winner in this free agency class because last year he was
Absolutely.
sacked 68 times. That is the second most by an NFL rookie quarterback. Number one, Amir, is David Carr. That was a quarterback that joined a new
I
team in
thought it
the
was Sam
Houston
Howell.
Texans. I'm sorry?
I thought it was Sam Howell at first. Last year he was getting murdered. I felt
He
bad
was.
for him.
He was, but he was top five, at least from what the graphic I saw. But David Carr was on literally a brand new franchise with players that they were just picking up out of free
Mhm.
agency and drafting, and he got sacked 70. So Caleb Williams was only two off of that, and this is an esteemed organization. But they went out there, they traded for Jonah Jackson. They traded for an all pro guard in Joe Tooney. And then they signed one of PFF's top rated centers last year in Drew Dalman from the Atlanta Falcons. This interior offensive line is amazing. They still have the number 10 pick if they want to address the tackle positions. But I think Caleb Williams, no doubt about it, is a winner so far. And this is the Ben Johnson effect already in play. Amir, your thoughts?
Yeah, man, Ben Johnson is about to make change the whole entire franchise and this team around. And I kept saying it for sure. The Lions' biggest loss, was not any of the players that they lost. It was them losing Ben Johnson. And I constantly saw Lions fans slander on Ben Johnson for calling play calls. In the playoffs, or the trick plays and stuff like that. When that game was not on him, he still called an amazing game. And it goes to show that it didn't matter what team they were playing against, he somehow found ways to scheme up against teams, and it starts up front. And the second he goes to Chicago, he goes ahead, puts pressure on the front office and say, "Hey, build this offensive line up," and that's exactly what he's doing, man. Last year, Caleb got murdered. A lot of that was from kind of being young, trying to extend plays and improvise a lot.
Yes.
But the O line was honestly just horrible, And last year, we also saw it with Justin Fields as well. This year, the O line struggled really, really bad, and so Ben Johnson, shout out him, for really realizing, like, all right, look, already Caleb has one of the most talented arms in the league. The receiving core is there. I think in the draft they'll go ahead and draft the running back, kind of add to that depth in the backfield. And I think them building up front is a winner for the whole entire franchise.
For Chicago, what's interesting now is the receiving group. Of course, you have DJ Moore. He's locked down for multiple years. Cole Kmet came on second half of the year for the second year in a row. It really seems like they found a connection. What's interesting now for Chicago is addressing again the running back position. Also, is the receiving room. Of course, you have DJ Moore. Outside of that, do we bring back Keenan Allen? If not, there's rumblings that they might trade or get in the mix for a guy like Cooper Kupp. Excuse me, he's already been released, so they can sign Cooper Kupp. Something to look out for. But again, with a guy like Rome Odunze, who was my guy going into this past year, he's amazing. He's going to continue to take strides for this offense. But how can you round out the offense is what I'm saying. The finishing touches, who are that? Is that a Keenan Allen or another guy? Interested to see that. As a Browns fan, I think this is actually a reason why we come away as losers in this year's free agency class, Amir. Now, you might be saying that's crazy. Why do you think re-signing a Hall of Fame first ballot level player is crazy? Why does that make you a loser? It's the direction of our franchise. We are the Cleveland Browns. We are Browns fans, if you guys aren't already aware of that. And the Browns are terrible at building our rosters and finding the most important position, which is the quarterback. I don't think that this deal does anything else besides giving Miles the ability to be the highest paid player, non-quarterback, in NFL history. Amir, he's a winner. Again, personally, getting $40 million a year guaranteed is always a good thing. But for the Browns organization, it might have been better to trade him now because his trade value is going to get worse and worse every year. So trade him now, get what you can, and build towards the future around a guy like Abdul Carter on the defensive end. Your thoughts, though, Amir? Of course, he comes away as a winner, but your thoughts on both sides?
Yeah, man, I love Myles Garrett. And I know people from the outside looking
Yes.
in, the non-Browns fans and also the casual Browns fans, they're going to look at this and be like, oh, the Browns wanted to re-sign Myles Garrett. But it's like, for us, we're already in salary cap hell. We've restructured Deshaun's contract to where this year we don't got to pay him a lot. But next year, we're going to have to pay him a bunch of money. And so, for us, I mean, at this point, I mean, like, if the relationship between Miles and Cleveland is already a bit damaged, even though he's going to play for Cleveland, he's still not going to be that happy. And for us, like, we're going to go ahead and draft the quarterback, I think, at 2. And so for us, we really need that cap space to really build around him. And so, me personally, with all the shenanigans going on, if I was Cleveland, Andrew Bear, I would have went ahead and traded Miles, been on good terms with trade him, get some draft capital and really focus on building for the future.
A lot can happen at that number 2 overall pick. Some people would say we go Travis Hunter. I am in the camp, whether if we have Miles or we don't have Miles, to get Abdul Carter. If he's available, I would rather go that route because this roster is not ready to win now. I'm a firm believer of that. So why go out there and tarnish another young quarterback's career? That's my train of thinking. But hey, if you can get a guy that is, has that mentality and he's ready to turn around a franchise, sometimes a player's that good where the situation around him doesn't really matter. I mean, look at a guy like Patrick Mahomes. He had a good team, but he elevated their ceiling to levels beyond because, hey, he was just that freaking good. But, I mean, hey, Abdul Carter would be my pick at number 2. But let's move on to the NFC side of things with the Seattle Seahawks. Amir, they made a lot of noise this offseason as they traded away DK Metcalf, who's been a cornerstone in their franchise for a long time. But when you talk about cornerstones, Tyler Lockett got released this past or this off season, and then they also traded away a guy who resurgent his career there in Seattle in Geno Smith. So a lot of key captains and pillars on this offensive end were shipped off this offseason, whether by trade or by release in free agency. They added Sam Darnold. Outside of that, didn't do much. So to me, Amir, Sam Darnold, he's a good quarterback. I think honestly, you saved money getting Sam Darnold, where apparently what Geno Smith wanted on a contract extension. You actually saved money if those reports are true. So for Sam Darnold, he might be a slightly better quarterback than Geno Smith, but does he really elevate your ceiling enough to justify getting rid of DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, these guys that going forward, this offense, again, I just don't think that getting a guy like Sam Darnold, who's not an elite quarterback, and you're giving him just Jackson Smith and Jigba, how much better is this offense going to get? Amir, your thoughts? I think the Seattle offense in general comes away as losers in free agency.
I completely agree with you. And I said this a couple of months ago, was like, people really undervalue how loaded the Seahawks offense really was. I mean, you had, JSN, DK, Tyler Lockett. And so, this receiving core was loaded as it is. And so you go ahead and move off of, you go ahead and put your trust in a guy who had one breakout year, in a roster that was actually Super Bowl ready. I mean, you both said it. Kevin O'Connell is an amazing coach, following from that Shanahan tree. And so, for Seattle, it's like, yes, you save money, but you go ahead, you get rid of, Tyler Lockett and DK. You put Sam Darnold behind an offensive line who's also a bit underwhelming, and a run game is underwhelming.
The offensive line is terrible. Yeah.
Right. And so now you're going to put your faith in this defense too. Honestly, throughout the year last year, Seattle's defense, for as talented as they are, they were super inconsistent. And they really didn't start going until that second stretch of the year. Next year that might change. That might be better, but it's like, they lost too much just to gain somebody, who's really risky to put their faith in.
I will say that in their case here, they do have a pick in the middle of the first round. I do think they go out interior offensive lineman or tackle, depending on who's on the board. But outside of that, again, you're asking Sam Darnold to elevate these wide receivers on the outside, like Jake Bobo, for example. Is he good enough to do that? I guess we're going to have to wait and see. Overall, though, I think they took a huge step back offensively. And Sam Darnold is put in a pretty bad situation going forward. But hey, maybe we're wrong. Maybe he can continue to improve at just 27 years old. For the New England Patriots in general, they improved as a team, and I think they come away maybe as the biggest winner this free agency. They added a Super Bowl champion in Milton Williams on that interior front. They added Harold Landry, who's an athletic freak, Robert Spillane on the outside, and Carlton Davis to shore up that cornerback room. They also have the number 4 overall pick. They can go Will Campbell. They can go Travis Hunter if he's on the board. They can trade down in typical Patriots fashion. And then they also have pick 38. So 2 top 38 picks. You added a bunch of players. You're spending a lot of your money, which Mike Vrabel's taking advantage of. And I just think that they come away as winners, man. Now it's time to address this offensive side of the ball in the draft. Help out Drake May. But if they can do that, I think they're the biggest winners this year, Amir.
Yeah, definitely. I think, man, this Patriots defense is going to be great. And them signing Mike Vrabel was absolutely perfect, for what this franchise needed. You kind of saw last year, they sort of put a bit too much pressure on Drake May to where it was like, he literally had nobody. He was completely elevating his offense. They're running a bunch of spread, a bunch of empty, despite, lacking in receiver talent. But I think having Mike Vrabel understanding like, all right, Drake May's still young. We're going to go ahead, probably, draft Ted McMillan for our 4th overall pick. Draft the receiver. If Travis Hunter is available, luckily, we'll maybe go ahead in that route and potentially get him. And I think the only thing that was a big concern is I want to say they spent like $150 million, just on these 4 players alone, and that's a big concern because they really didn't make any groundbreaking offensive moves. And from my standpoint of it, I really thought they were going to be a bit more aggressive on targeting a guy like DK, in trade talks, but they went ahead and decided to address the defense, which I'm honestly not mad about either. But I think this is an instant winner, for Drake May, for Vrabel, despite them not getting offensive talent. I think them loading the defense up alone is going to really help them in the long term.
Yeah, I think when you look at this division, it's only the Bills that you really worry about. Miami's kind of just been plateauing. You kind of know what Miami is. The Jets, they are going to hit a little bit of a reset going into next year. So That number two
Yeah.
spot in this division is wide open. And if the Patriots can make the right draft picks and this team can gel from day number one offensively, again, that's why there's noise around the Patriots potentially sneaking into the playoffs next year because they're going to have an easy schedule. But also, if they can make the right moves, the talent on this roster is going to be night and day compared to last season. Speaking of another offense in the AFC, I think the Las Vegas Raiders come away as winners. You added the Triple Crown winner in Alex Kappa on that offensive line. And then you also brought in Geno Smith, who, sure, he's not going to take you from a wild card team to a Super Bowl contender, but he keeps you in the mix. And he keeps you in the mix enough where you can draft a Shador Sanders at number 6. You can draft an Ashton Jeanty and then worry about quarterback 2 years down the line. Geno Smith gives you a little bit of flexibility there, but he also keeps you relevant and competitive this year with that talented defense. Also, on the way, you have the number 6 pick where you can go Jeanty, you can go Will Johnson to get his Richard Sherman here on this Raiders defense. You can go a lot of different ways, but with 2 top 37 picks, bringing in 2 great players offensively, I think they come away as winners. Maybe not so much as the Patriots, but I think the Raiders are pretty happy with their offseason so far. So far, Amir, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they come out as winners as well. And I'm not the biggest Geno guy, but it's like, I mean, really in this situation, that's honestly the best case scenario.
Yeah,
I mean, in a free agency where there's no really young stunning talent that's available, Geno is really their best option. Unless they're going to go ahead and go after Russ or A Rod, but it's like, I mean, Geno's still showing that he has some gas left in the tank. For a fact he's not going to retire anytime soon. And so it was like for Pete Carroll as well. I mean, you have the 6th overall pick. You can honestly go, in either direction here. I say target defense just because it's like, there's nobody offensively that's going to really catapult this offense to crazy heights. Unless you get lucky and a guy like Will Campbell's available. I mean, target him maybe. But other than that, I say target Will Johnson. You also got the 37th pick. In that case, you can either, trade up or trade down, get some extra draft capital. And so I think the Raiders come on as winners.
yeah. Again, history between Geno and Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll was able to grab the most out of Geno Smith. So obviously they understand each other. And let's not forget they brought in Chip Kelly as their offensive coordinator. I think Aiden O'Connell could be fine in that system because it's that quarterback friendly. So Geno Smith getting an elevated quarterback in a very quarterback friendly system. It should work out going into the future. What's interesting though, Amir, I'm not sure if you saw the report, but Max Crosby came out a day before they got Geno and said, hopefully Aaron Rodgers is the guy that we have at quarterback next year. And then they went out there and got Geno. So a bit of interesting there. Aaron Rodgers, Geno Smith, who would you rather have? Very quickly, let's go back. Who would you rather have, Amir, for let's say 1 to 2 years? Who would you rather have, Rodgers or Geno Smith with this team going forward?
I mean, well, if it's in like a 2 year stretch, me personally, I would lean towards A Rod. I think A Rod is still a better quarterback. And me, you talked about it. Aaron Rodgers said it himself. A down year for him is a career for everybody else.
Yes.
And he really showed that. For Geno, for as talented as the Seattle offense was, I mean, he showed a lot of moments where it was like, what are you doing? Like it was countless times where he turned the ball over in the red zone, play reckless, play like, with a crazy gunslinger mentality. And so personally, if I was going to lean towards somebody for 2 years stretch, I'd say A Rod. But I think Geno's better. For the long term, he still has some gas in the tank. A Rod probably has like 1 year left at most.
Yeah. I think this is the last for Aaron Rodgers, and it looks like he's going to
I
Pittsburgh.
think it is too.
So,
I hope
Hall of Fame
not, man.
quarterback, but you missed last week's show, but I really said that my prediction was for Rodgers just to hang it up, right? Just to hang it up, be a first ballot guy, and if not, I said Pittsburgh, and it looks like Pittsburgh's going to get their guy for what that means. I just don't know if he's going to be able to, I guess, hold up in a tough AFC North division. Outside of that, Amir, this graphic was made before we had some people sign, but veteran defensive linemen, I think they all come away as losers this past weekend, where Jonathan Allen was a staple for Washington in their rebuild, and he got cut out of nowhere just because of salary cap reasons.
That's
Grady
crazy.
Jarrett, same thing there in Atlanta. Joey Bosa, it seemed like he was a four-lifer there with the Chargers. He gets cut. Von Miller is on the move, even though he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Looks like he's going back to Denver. At least that's what the reports say. Trey Hendrickson for Cincy, and also Sam Hubbard. Sam Hubbard told the Cincinnati Bengals front office, if you're not going to bring me back, I'm going to retire. And you're still going to have to pay me my guaranteed contract. or you can just hold on to me and I can actually produce for you next year. They decided to cut him. They tried to, I guess, buy his bluff, and Sam Hubbard retired from the NFL as a veteran offensive defensive lineman. And granted, he wasn't like an all-pro Pro Bowler, but he was a very productive guy. Trey Hendrickson
Yeah.
led the league in sacks last year, 17 and a half of them. And it might be traded, but as of right now, he's still a member of the Bengals. Amir, it's just a rough week for veteran defensive linemen. Myles Garrett could have also been on the move. Your thoughts about these teams maybe getting rid of these guys that should be for lifers because they've done that much for their organizations?
Yeah, man. The one that was really disappointed was Trey, and for him, it's like, I keep on saying, like, I don't understand why they're so cheap. Like, just pay your guys. There's no, there's literally no more production this guy could have done in order to get paid. Leading the league in sacks. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
The dude, potentially, should have won defensive player of the year. 17 and a half sacks is absolutely crazy to not get paid. And especially because the defense is already bad enough. You go ahead, get rid of him, and it's like, now it's like why? What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, the only one that I kind of understood, even though he was that great of a player, was Jonathan Allen. Because last year, one of my guys was Johnny Newton out of Illinois, big boy out of Illinois. If you guys aren't familiar, please go do your due diligence, watch him. He just is dominant up front. It's a big reason why, Amir, if I'm not sure if you're familiar yet, but Walter Nolan is my favorite guy in this year's draft class. I don't know. Apparently, I just love trench play and I love these big defensive interior linemen. But Johnny Newton for Washington should take a big step next year, next to Daron Payne. So I kind of understood that one. But still, to see a guy that, I don't know. I talked about this last week, Amir. It's the same argument I had with Cooper Kupp, where it's like, I just think that certain players should be for lifers. When you think about the NBA, Udonis Haslem, he wasn't that great of a player in the grand scheme of things, but he meant a lot to the organization, to the city, to the fans, where nobody wanted to see him go. So that's why, even though he wasn't really playing at the tail end of his career, he stayed in Miami and they continued to give him contracts. Think about Magic with the Lakers. Again, Kobe with the Lakers, Jordan with the Bulls until he decided to come back. There's certain players that I just think should stay in organizations. Tim Duncan with the Spurs, that you just, no matter what, whether if they start to tail off a little bit at the end of their career, pay them, right? Because they mean that much to the city and the organization. Your thoughts on that? Let's say this: if you're the GM, for example, with the Rams, Cooper Kupp still has $40 million left on his 2-year contract. Would you rather get rid of him, move on because hey, we're bringing in Devontae Adams, or would you rather pay him and let him kind of coast off his career with a city that he's won a Super Bowl for?
So for the Rams, it's a bit different scenario because, Cooper Cup seemed like, he wanted like a new beginning, somewhere fresh. And so, in that situation, I think the Rams sort of, did him a service of being like, all right, we can either trade you or, go ahead and just release you. We don't want anything in return. We want you to be happy. Go ahead, choose somebody to play for. So I respect that. What I have a problem is a guy like Sam Hubbard. Sam Hubbard wasn't getting paid a crazy amount of money anyway. The dude's been there his whole entire career. He's literally from Ohio. He means a lot for that team, for that defense and that chemistry. And he's a guy that could have been a true for lifer. And you go ahead and he says, all right, if you cut me, I'm going to retire. And they literally cut him.
Yeah. Amir, do you know where I think Cooper Kupp's going to end up?
I'm gonna be honest. I took some time to really think about it, and at first I was like, Baltimore is it, but Baltimore brought in D-Hop, and me personally, you know, I'm kind of curious to how teams are going to use him because I think at this stage in his career, where he's dealing with a lot of injuries, where he's not as much of a vertical threat like he was in 2021. At first you would sort of assume that he's going to spend most of the time in the slot, but honestly, I think a team that could potentially be good for him, man. It's going to sound crazy, but Green Bay could be underrated or Chicago.
I went on the AFC side of things. I said Denver.
Hey,
Sean Payton
now
loves this.
listen. I was gonna say Denver as well, Denver or honestly the Chargers, but they got Ladd in the slot.
Yeah, but I said Denver because look, young quarterback, you need a smart slot wide receiver. You got Troy Franklin and Cortland Sutton on the outside. Look, you just need weapons in this offense, and I think getting a veteran like that, Sean Payton loves the slot guys. He could be like their elevated version of like a Lance Moore pull of the day there. But yeah, I had him going to Denver and Von Miller. Maybe they can get Von Miller and Cooper Kupp to head to Denver, and then all of a sudden you got a lot of great and Hall of Fame level veterans coming into Denver, mile high, right? But here are some other of the big moves here. You see them on your screen. A lot of these were free agency moves outside of DK getting traded to Pittsburgh and getting $150 million on a big old extension there. Outside of that, like Devontae to the Rams, we all know about that. Fields, interesting contract because he got a 2-year, $40 million deal, but 30 million of it was guaranteed in year number one. So he's getting all of his money up front. And that tells me that they're still going to draft a quarterback in this year's draft. I could definitely see them going with a Shedeur Sanders at pick 7 and giving Justin Fields some competition under Aaron Glenn because he's bringing that no
We're getting
nonsense.
Shedeur.
Yeah, Shedeur. I could see Shedeur because New York, Shedeur, big name, kind of just fits.
The Browns are getting Shedeur, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I really am
We're getting
against
Cleveland.
quarterback at this point. I think if we get a quarterback, he's going to come in, he's going to have 2 or 3 good games, and then after that, we're just not going to put him in a great situation, and then they're just going to kind of fall off, and the Browns are going to get made fun of again. And 2 years down the line, we're going to be looking at Arch Manning and DJ Lagway. But regardless, I think the Jets, that contract tells me that they're going to go and get another quarterback. Just interested to see who it is. Arizona beefed up their defensive front. Love to see that as they need pretty much any kind of help that they can get on that defensive side. Paulson Adebo coming off a career year goes to the Giants. The Giants also picked up Javon Holland. So that Giants defensive secondary, it kind of looks better. DJ Reed goes to Detroit. Travarius Ward goes to Indy, out of all places. But Indy, it's been a long time since they've had a great boundary cornerback. They get one there. Nate Hobbs goes to Green Bay as they still try to figure out that Jair Alexander situation. Is he going to be traded? Is he not? Another guy I think that should be a 4-lifer. And one of the underrated signings, Trayvon Mulray, is on the market, or he was, and then he went to the Carolina Panthers, who just gave J.C. Horn a boatload of money. So Carolina secondary gets better in that regard. Amir, there's some big names still left out there. You still got Justin Reed, who was recently released. You got guys like Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, first ballot Hall of Famers in their own respective. Amir, your thoughts on these guys on your screen and potentially the guys that are still out there.
Man, the most sleeper pick was DJ Reed, and that's exactly what Detroit needed. You go ahead, get rid of Carlton Davis, and you go ahead and bring in a guy that's even better and cheaper. And DJ Reed is the guy who I was really advocating for this whole entire season. And so for Detroit to pick him up, that's huge because Detroit, it's the same issues that they've been dealing with as secondary issues. And that's the biggest reason why, even if they were healthy, I still think Philly still would have smoked them because the secondary has been disappointing, despite, Kirby having an all-pro year, despite, Terrion, showing some flashes. And it's like you go ahead and you draft 2 corners and the secondary still struggles. And so I think bringing in DJ Reed was really, really huge for them. But the biggest winner in the free agency, in my opinion, is Minnesota, man. Minnesota, they targeted all out on defense. They go ahead and bring in 2, really, really solid interior O linemen and Ron Kelly and Will Fries as well. You bring back Byron Murphy, Hargrave, Jonathan Allen. And so I think this Minnesota team, this is a Super Bowl roster-ready team. The question is that quarterback, but I mean, seriously, I think, me and you both said it before JJ got drafted. Minnesota, I think, their thought process is like this. They're like, all right, if we can, we would like A-Rod, a veteran quarterback because, if we get a veteran QB, the chances of us going on a run is a lot higher. But it's like, I mean, really, if we end up with JJ, the coaching and the roster is so good to where it's like it doesn't even matter.
No, it doesn't. And I think JJ is ready. I think he's a smart quarterback. And as we saw at Michigan for years, he's not a guy that's going to be a superstar quarterback. He's not going to be your Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen's of the world, but he could be a very good version of like a Brock Purdy, where he's good enough where he can have this offense humming at a high level. And that defense, with everything that they've added, this team, again, like you said, has a Super Bowl roster. And I will say this, if J.J. McCarthy is bad, he's going to look good. You know why? Because they got Jordan Addison, Jefferson, Hockenson, Aaron Jones is back in the mix. They still got Ty Chandler, if I'm not mistaken. that offense has the key pillars. They need to work on that interior offensive line, which they have with the signings that you mentioned. It's complete. I mean, I think at this point, you go into the draft, you only have one first round, you only have one pick in the first 2 rounds, and you address that defensive secondary. Maybe get a Malachi Starks. Maybe you get, someone that's exciting on the defensive end. But I mean, hey, there's also been rumblings where the Browns recently released a somewhat Minnesota legend. Fans loved him. That's where he got his early start. Dalvin Tomlinson is a free agent now. Maybe he could goes there, Amir, on a minimum, adds to that defensive front because we all know that having a great starting lineup's great, but having depth is equally as important. Dalvin Tomlinson, you got John Allen, like you mentioned. I forgot the other guy you mentioned, Hargrave. You got all three of those guys on the
Javon
interior
Hargrave.
swapping out, playing offensive lines like Green Bay in Detroit.
That's scary.
It's scary. I think you go out there and get a Malachi Starks from Georgia. He could be the heir apparent to a guy like Harrison Smith. That defense could be scary. I'll say this about Minnesota. If I'm them, it really just depends on where JJ McCarthy is in his recovery process. To me, I do like when quarterbacks have a full year where they're healthy and there's always this chance that they could be put in the game. So these guys are, preparing for the game at a high level. And if that is the case, if you want to give JJ at least one more year to really get used to the NFL speed and level, I'm okay with completing the prophecy, bringing in Aaron Rodgers, a guy that is following in
Yeah.
Brett Favre's footsteps, going from Green Bay to the Jets, where they were all bad, where both of them were terrible, and then he finishes off his career strong in Minnesota. I like if Rodgers is there for 1 year. You know Rodgers is going to be great, and he's going to play at a Pro Bowl level at the bare minimum. Again, career year for others is a bad year for Rodgers. I like him to finish out his career in Minnesota, complete the prophecy, and play on a contending team if you're going to suit up. But I'm also on the camp that Rodgers should retire. Amir, your final thoughts on Minnesota before we wrap up?
Yeah, man, Rodgers in Minnesota, his ego and his pride probably won't, go there. He's probably like, man, I don't want to fall after Favre. Me and him don't
Yes.
got a great relationship. But, I mean, that would be absolutely perfect. And, the biggest difference between Minnesota and the Jets, like the Jets, they were already, poverty, already, completely going down in a dumpster fire. And so I think, us as fans, that really loved the game and that looked at the landscape of their roster going into last year, we're thinking like, man, like this team is gonna go ahead and perform. But it's like, we honestly got our hopes too high because we know how Jets football is. It's completely underwhelming. They underperformed and they struggle. But Minnesota, they just came off a year where they literally won 14 games. With Sam Darnold, a guy that completely just like resurges his entire career. And so this would be perfect for Rodgers. If I'm him, I'm throwing my ego out the window. I'm like, man, look, I'm coming in, sign me to a 1 year. And I'm trying to go on a run this 1 year. And
Yeah.
honestly, to go back to your point about Malachi Starks, he just ran a very disappointing, a very disappointing 40. And so I think for him, this is a guy where it's like, scouts are going to go ahead and sleep on him and let this guy slip. And he's a guy that a team like Minnesota should not pass on.
Yeah. I mean,
Minnesota just brought back Harrison Smith, which I think is good having a big time veteran guy back there to really, still coach up this defense, teach the defense. You bring in Isaiah Rodgers, a really, really solid vet. And so I think it'll be a perfect fit for him to really become, the next franchise DB, for this team.
I love the fit. That's why I've had him there in my mock drafts. But Amir, that's going to do it for free agency winners and losers so far. We'll update you guys as we go. But going forward, we're going to have a lot of fun stuff coming up next week. We got some power rankings.